Hello, this is Albert Pipkins, and I would like to discuss the physical and spiritual expansion of America from the end of the American Revolution to the nation's maturity as we see it today. From the onset, Americans were spurred on by an already inherent English tradition to spread westward, and by the Louisiana Purchase by Thomas Jefferson. During this age, Americans expanded into the lush Ohio Kentucky Valley in the north and Mississippi Tennessee region in the south. The population movement in vast tracts of land with sparse population density and confrontations with Native Americans manifested a propensity towards a severe individualism and hedonism. Consequently, a mere 5 to 10% of Americans would attend church regularly. Some may have seen the dire situation as hopeless, not Lyman Beecher. Lyman Beecher recognized the situation as an opportunity and set a vision of a free society and a pious Christian America to inform our democratic laws. The dream permeated all of American Protestantism, but how would Christianity rise to influence and make Beecher's desires reality? The Beecher described the basic structure to the methods: preach the gospel, distribute Bibles, plant churches, and establish schools in order to reform American morals. A major concern remained: how do we persuade all our wild American brothers and sisters? One instrument of influence was the voluntary society concept, which encouraged denominational cooperation instead of political domination. As a result, numerous complementary institutions sprang to influence the nation. But an illiterate and boisterous West would not be subdued by institutions. Something else was needed. Contemporary critics of the second method considered the methodology as an insult to level headed doctrine and psychological euphoria without aim. These criticisms did not stop the frontier preachers inculcated with passion and doctrine from the Second Great Awakening. The means of Christian conversion was escalated by a fervent preacher who enthralled the frontier outcasts with visions of heavenly glory and horrific pictures of hell. This was James McGrady, who called a sacrament meeting which families came from as far as 100 miles away seeking the Spirit of God. The name of this methodology is a camp revival, a Christian tradition which has been carried on in America for nearly 2 centuries by the likes of Charles Finney, D.L. Moody, and Billy Graham. However, the Christian institution in its enthusiasm failed to address appropriately and vigorously the Southern institution of slavery, a melancholy story for those who endured it, and frightening reminder of humanity's propensity towards tyranny, even for Christians. The African American slave, picked up and sold by the English merchants by their African neighbors and Muslims, were uprooted and led to a foreign land. Everything was taken from them, even a noble death. Something was necessary to fill the void in the slave's being. Slave owners did not initially want slaves to learn of Christianity in fear of the development of a liberty mindset. But New Testament arguments were forged, such as apostles did not require liberation of existing slaves, and the Old Testament commands, which directed Israelites to purchase bondmen forever, Leviticus 25:46. After experimenting with Christianity's dissemination to the slaves, owners found knowledgeable slaves had acceptance of them, and the slaves showed increased productivity. Thus, the slave church pastor became indispensable for disseminating a spiritual deliverance to the slaves as Christ promised. The scriptural basis for the slave movement took the air out of a vigorous anti slavery movement in the South. How would the North and the rest of the Christian world respond? The influential millennialist interpretation of Revelation's convulsion of nations and Uncle Tom's Cabin description and plea led to the North isolating, pressuring, and ultimately going to war with the South in order to abolish the institution of slavery. The conflict resulting from different biblical interpretation highlights the first of several more conundrums Christianity faced in America. New scientific, technological, and literary techniques resulted in questions which Christianity answered inadequately for many, as America has become secularized. The theological and practical questions seem to have existed from the onset of Christianity. Do we take a relativist approach and mold Christianity to a context which the regional population can understand, or do we take a universal approach and conform the population to Scripture's identification of the general state of man? The later being pertinent as the South and North saw in Scripture what their cultural context dictated to them. even though rationalism and universalism was influential in the Western culture at that time.